This lecture is on nutritional requirements for human health, and this comes from Chapter 11. It's the first lecture in our series on Chapter 11, and we should be able to make our way through it pretty quickly. So first of all, where does all of our food come from? Well, globally speaking, approximately 77% of our food comes from agriculture. The three main crops are rice, wheat, and corn. And wheat and rice together make up 50% of human calories consumed. Now 16% of our food comes from livestock. Livestock would be things like cattle, pigs, and chicken. It also includes sheep and goats, ducks, anything else that humans raise for the purpose of consumption. And then finally, 7% of our food comes from the ocean, and this is our fish and our shellfish. Shellfish would be things that don't fall into the fish family, but we still eat, so things like shrimp or crabs, oysters, clams, that sort of stuff. Now, how much food do humans need on a regular basis? Well, the approximate number of calories for men is 2,500 calories per day. And for women, it's 2,000 calories per day. Now, these are just averages. It varies greatly from person to person, depending on body size and the level of physical activity. Obviously, if you're more active, you're going to need many more calories. Less active people need fewer calories. I remember when the Olympics were running, Michael Phelps was talking about how many calories he needs, and it's somewhere in the range of 10,000 calories per day just because he works out so much. Now, a varied diet should include about 30% protein, 60% carbohydrates, and about 10% fats. Now, it's important to notice that protein and carbohydrates have approximately the same caloric value per gram, so about 4 calories per gram, whereas 1 gram of fats will actually give you 9 calories. So more than double what you're getting from proteins and carbohydrates, which is why we are recommended to watch our fat intake. Now let's move on to some of the disorders that are associated with nutrition. So the first one is malnutrition. Malnutrition is when your diet lacks the correct amounts of proteins, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, and/or minerals. So this means that you could be getting all of the calories you need, but not all of the nutrients. There are several different types of malnutrition. The most common is anemia, which is related to iron deficiency, and this affects the greatest number of people worldwide. Approximately 3 billion people worldwide are predicted to be experiencing anemia. Now, another very common one is vitamin A deficiency. This can lead to blindness if it's not corrected, and there are approximately 450,000 people who suffer from blindness because of vitamin A deficiency every year. There's a lot of other ones you may have heard of. Scurvy is a lack of vitamin C. This was common among sailors who were traveling the ocean for long periods of time. They didn't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, so they weren't able to get the vitamin C they needed. Pellagra is a lack of niacin. Beriberi is a lack of thiamine, which is a vitamin B1. Having a goiter, which is a swollen thyroid gland, that could be because of a lack of iodine. Rickets is a lack of vitamin D, and kwashiorkor is a lack of protein. Now, interesting note about the goiter, one of the reasons why we have iodized salt now is to help with the lack of iodine in people's diets. So if you ever look at your thing of table salt, a lot of people have where it says iodized salt. That's to make sure we're getting all of our iodine. So, quiz question for you. The most widespread form of malnutrition is A, iron deficiency or anemia, B, vitamin A deficiency, C, kwashiorkor, or D, scurvy. Now, if you're not sure, go ahead and check your notes, rewind the tape, go back and listen to the previous slide, because the answer is A, iron deficiency anemia. Like I said, iron deficiency anemia affects approximately 3 billion people, which is almost half of the world's population. All right, now undernutrition. Undernutrition is what happens when you don't get enough calories, period. So you're constantly hungry if you're undernourished. Now, the World Health Organization states that between 100 to 400 calories too little is enough to count as undernutrition. So maybe you're a middle-aged woman, you should be getting 2,000 calories per day. Instead, you're getting only 1,800 calories per day. That can count as undernutrition if it continues for a long enough period of time. Food insecurity is related to undernutrition. Food insecurity is the lack of access to safe, sufficient, and nutritious food that meets the dietary needs. So if you aren't sure that you're going to have food available, or if the food that you have available is unsafe, or if the food that you have available isn't enough to feed you, or if the food you have available isn't nutritious enough, all of those things would be considered food insecurity. And lack of access could be due to environmental factors. It could be due to economic factors, like not being able to afford the food. It could be due to political factors, like maybe the government is holding the food for its own personnel and not releasing it to the general public. It could also be due to social factors. So food insecurity can occur for many different reasons. Now, famine is when you have a situation where food insecurity is so extreme that large numbers of people actually die from starvation. And sadly enough, it's predicted that approximately 8.8 million people are dying each year from a lack of food. So the direct cause of death for these people is just not having enough food or starvation. This is something that people are working to correct, and we'll discuss at the end of this lecture what some of the causes for undernutrition are. So here's a graph from your textbook that shows the change in global undernutrition since approximately 1969. So the number on the side there is millions of people who are suffering from undernutrition. So in 1969 we had approximately 875 million people suffering from undernutrition. We hit an all-time low in 1995 to 1997 with approximately 825 million people suffering from undernutrition. And as population has grown, so has our global undernutrition crisis. And currently we're looking at somewhere around 1,025 million people, which is 1,025 million people who are suffering from undernutrition globally. Now, as the population continues to grow, this is going to continue to be a problem, especially when we have years like we've had with severe droughts, especially in Africa, where food insecurity is already rampant. A drought year will actually destroy whole families because they won't be able to produce enough food to feed themselves. So when a large number of people die due to undernutrition, this is known as A, food security, B, food insecurity, C, famine, or D, malnourishment. When a large number of people die due to undernutrition. Go ahead and think about your answer. Pause the tape if you need to. The correct answer is C, famine. Famine is when we have people actually dying from undernutrition, dying from starvation. Now, the opposite of undernutrition would be a problem that we experience in this country, which is overnutrition. Overnutrition is the ingestion of either too many calories or of improper foods. And the result, either way, is a population of overweight people. Now, we have approximately 1 billion people worldwide who are estimated to be overweight. And there are several diseases that are related to overnutrition. The first two are related to each other. That would be heart disease and hypertension, which is also known as high blood pressure. Both of these kind of go hand in hand. We also have a correlation between overnutrition and type 2 diabetes, as well as a correlation between overnutrition and stroke. Now, if you think about it, undernutrition tends to be a problem. Undernutrition and malnutrition tend to be issues in developing countries, especially the very poor developing countries. If you remember from our Food for Thought activity, this would be the case of most of the continent of Africa receiving very little food compared with what the continent of North America receives. So, follow-up quiz question to malnutrition, undernutrition, and overnutrition. When a human receives enough calories but is lacking essential nutrients, do we call this A, malnutrition, B, undernutrition, or C, overnutrition? When humans receive enough calories but lack essential nutrients. So go ahead and pause the recording if you need to and select your answer. And the correct answer is A, malnutrition. So malnutrition is getting enough calories but not getting all the nutrients you need. Like we said, this could be lacking iron, which would be anemia. Could be lacking any of your essential vitamins, vitamin A, B, B1 through 12, C, D, E, any of those. Or other things like not getting enough protein. All right, so finally, what are some reasons for malnutrition and undernutrition? First of all, poverty. Poverty is a lack of resources, and that can lead to a lack of food. If you don't have money or you don't have the way to get money, you probably won't be getting enough food, and that can lead to malnutrition and undernutrition. Secondly, there's an unequal distribution of food globally. We have too much food available in some regions, such as the United States, and too little food available in others. Even within a country, a lot of times the food is concentrated in the hand of the wealthy, and people in the rural areas outside the cities tend to be in danger of starvation. There's also the issue of refugee populations, and these are people who, because of unrest, political unrest, have had to leave their country of origin. And so these people live in huge camps, 40,000 people in a camp, and they are relying on food aid from developed nations to be able to feed themselves on a daily basis. So refugee populations frequently suffer from malnutrition and undernutrition. Political unrest itself can lead to crimes, riots, or rebellion in a country, and that can result in a disruption of the food chain and an increase in food insecurity. And then also we have an issue where grain is being used for animal feed instead of to feed people. A lot of times in wealthier nations, especially like the United States, we choose to feed our corn or our soybeans to cows or chickens or pigs to raise them up and fatten them up because we have a desire to eat so much meat or to eat animal products like milk or cheese or eggs. So when our grain is given to animals, to feed animals instead of given to humans to feed them, we end up with a situation where we're using our food inefficiently. So we have large amounts of grain that go to raise up a single cow, whereas that large amount of grain could have gone to feed 20, 30, or 50 people instead of feeding that one cow. So this is another reason why we have malnutrition and undernutrition globally, is that a lot of the food that we produce on very valuable land, it ends up feeding animals instead of people. All right, so if you have any questions, feel free to email me at any time. That concludes our first lecture from Chapter 11, and stay tuned, we'll be posting the rest of them shortly.